Welcome everyone to Legion Gaming. I'm your host Donnie, and today I'm joined by a special guest we've had before. He's sort of like the other co-op partner. We have the 8-bit barrister, Vito.
Hey, glad to be back.
I'm glad you're back here as well, Vito, because we have a pretty fun topic today. It's episode 84. We're talking about Die Hard, the movies, a little bit actually, and then more about the Die Hard games, which many people may not know how many Die Hard games there are. There's not a whole lot, and while a lot of them aren't that spectacular, there's a lot of fun stuff to talk about. So I think it'll be a really enjoyable time.
It's weird because there aren't a whole lot, but there's more than you think. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's and for a little while too, like they started as back as like the NES and DOS, and then they went up to probably the GameCube. I want to say it's probably the most recent one. Actually, there's a few we won't talk about, so I should preface it with that. Like we aren't covering every single game because we just can't do that. We don't have access to a lot of them, and some just aren't really worth checking out. Like there's a couple of Die Hard mobile games that I didn't even look up because I'm just like, I'm not going to bother with those.
Yeah, no one cares.
Yeah, it's fine. So it's really more focusing on the original Die Hard trilogy, like Die Hard 1, Die Hard 2, and Die Hard with a Vengeance, and some of the games that spun off from those movies. So it'll be a fun-filled episode with that because we really do love John McClane and all of his hijinks and his anti-terrorism. It's great.
I'd say this is probably the second most requested episode that I've requested we record. I think the first one is Indiana Jones, and the second I'm like, let's do Die Hard.
Yeah, we'll have to do Indiana Jones pretty soon. That one we'll have to narrow down as well because there's a ton of games for that, and I know some are hard to get through. Like those adventure games probably are a little bit rough to dive into these days.
Totally.
But you know, there's a few good gems in there for sure. Plus the new one is just freaking fantastic.
Yes.
Before we get to Die Hard and everything, John McClane, what have you been playing lately, which I know is probably a lot of stuff I've been playing because we've been doing co-op.
Yeah, so I know you guys talked about it previously, but I finished Resident Evil Requiem.
Yes.
Fantastic game. It took me about 11 and a half hours to get through it. I really loved the gameplay between Grace and Leon, how with Grace you were very you had to sneak around and you were kind of scared, for lack of a better term.
There's
most
a lot
of the
more
time.
tension with Grace. We'll put that word in there.
Yeah, tension. It was more tense, but then Leon was like your medicine because once you played as Leon, you got to kick everything's ass.
Yeah.
And that was just such a relief. It worked so well. Definitely want to go through it again for a playthrough on what is the second highest? It's a normal, and then what's...
There's Nightmare, I believe it's called. Or no, is it Nightmare? I think it's Nightmare.
Nightmare. Well, there's the one with the ink ribbons. So
that's classic mode.
Classic, yeah. I want to do classic mode and see how I could get through it there with having to manage the ink ribbons. But it's definitely a great time. But it also got me in the mood to replay Resident Evil 2 because of a certain segment in Requiem. So I started playing the 2 remake, and I got through Claire A, and now I'm doing Leon B, and this is the first time I've played it on PS5. Really, that game is freaking awesome.
That's one of my favorites. It quickly went up my ranks for like favorite remakes and favorite games.
Yeah.
And on top of it, they recently released a PS5 Pro, another PS5 Pro upgrade, and I don't know, I forgot what the enhancements were, but it's kind of incredible that they've been adding more to it because there was the next gen update for PS5 and Series X, and now they've gone back and added more PS5 Pro enhancements, and it looks even better.
So is it now Pro enhanced?
I'm almost certain that the update came out within the last couple months. Within the last month, it was shortly around Requiem, I believe.
Yeah, I mean it looks great, runs great. It's just a fantastic time. I have a hard time trying to say which one I like better, 2 remake or 4 remake.
Yeah.
They're just both excellent, and I do want to go back and play 4 again. Although I'm kind of thinking that they might bring it to Switch too, so I'm like, well, should I wait and just get the new Generations pack whenever that comes out?
Yeah, the second Generations pack.
Yeah. So, and then I've been playing a little bit of Marathon with you. That's been a great time. That's I was talking a little bit about that in the last episode, and it's definitely a brutal time to start out because the game does not explain a whole lot, which is one of my criticisms, and like the UI can be kind of a challenge to deal with. But once you get going, and especially if you have a co-op partner or a group, it's really fun because it is satisfying, and you do have to kind of break away from your normal first-person shooting conventions. Like you can't go in guns blazing; it's just not going to work in this game. Yeah,
but it's really fun. It's been a really enjoyable co-op time.
Yeah, I generally will get my ass kicked most of the time when I'm playing it, but it's still fun. It's so satisfying when you're just getting destroyed most of the time, but then you have the one perfect run where you exfil, you complete all your objectives, and you get a bunch of loot. I think that's so rewarding after suffering so much through the previous playthroughs. But last week, I think it's out right now too, but they did the Cryo Archive release last week, and I got one run in there. You have to have 5,000 credits value loadout or something. So I kind of was hesitant to try it again because I didn't want to lose everything in my vault. It's kind of the hoarder mentality that I have. But I lasted about 10 minutes, got destroyed, and then I didn't try it again yet. But now I'm here visiting, my parents and everything, so I can't play it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to miss it this weekend. But it's a really fun time. It's really good. I urge people to try it. I want to see it last.
Yeah.
So, because I think especially I really like the art design, and
I really love it. It's got a very vibrant sci-fi neon color aesthetic that works really, really well. It's Bungie, so the gunplay is really great.
Exactly.
It's really fun because playing with you is really hilarious at times because there was a the last time we played the other night, I was like, Vito, there's these two guys coming up. They're about to see us.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm going to go stealth because I'm playing the assassin. So I'm about to go basically ambush these guys and flank them. And I said, Vito, I'm going to go stealth and flank them. And I kill one guy, I down him, and like, Vito, get this other guy. And I'm like, where
I
you
was
at?
on the roof. Yeah, because they didn't see you, but they saw me and they started wailing on me. So I was like, I got to get the heck out of here. So I ran on the roof. And then I was going to try to come around and flank them, but I guess they must have saw me climb on the roofs. They were waiting for me
a mile away. So I down one guy. I'm trying to finish him, and I'm trying to get his buddy. I'm like, Vito, get him. And I see that you're like a mile away. I'm like, where'd you go?
I was trying to go around on the roof and flank them, but they saw me. And you'll get into situations like that where it's sometimes you kind of think you're being really intelligent and you're going to like get around these people, but they always seem to know where you are and they'll get the drop on you. There's just people that play that game for hours upon hours and are really good at those types of extraction shooters. And I kind of play casually, like maybe I'll get a run or two in a night after I'm done playing something else. Mm-hmm. So I'm not as skilled as some other people.
Well, I'd say solo, you have to play more defensively because it's really just one-on-one, and sometimes you will catch the drop on somebody and that's the way you want to do it. But for me, like coming from like Warzone and those kind of games where if I feel like I'm in an advantageous position where I can flank these guys and kill them, that's one less squad we have to deal with.
Yeah.
Which is where I was. But it's funny because you're on the opposite. You're like, I'm just going to run away.
No, that's generally whenever I start getting wailed on, I'm like, I got to get out of here and try to come around. And, yeah. But in retrospect, I should have just ran straight into it and tried to get them. But I'm so used to kind of playing what I call it, when I play by myself, I still play with a squad. And a lot of times I get thrown in with what I call the goof troop, where they're kind of just doing random stuff and they end up getting us killed. Mm-hmm. So I'm always kind of like on the self-preservation aspect a little bit, even if I'm playing with you, who I know has got my back. It's just kind of,
frankly, like in most cases you should be with this game because that's the whole impetus is like, you're gonna die. You're guaranteed to die at some point. You can't avoid dying in these runs. And you kind of have to sort of part with the idea or deal with the idea that your gear isn't permanent. So you're going to lose stuff that you might be attached to, which you don't need to be attached to because you'll get more.
Right.
But it's hard to do that when so many other games train you to like, keep your gear, level it up. Right.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things where it's hilarious because it's like sometimes we'll get a drop on people, sometimes we won't.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of like play styles and like how we, finish the mission because we were on a time limit too. That's on top of it as well.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. That's what makes this game so fun too. Is like you have really dumb moments like that where it's like things go really great and really, it's seamlessly, and you might plan something and it goes all wrong, right? Like we might be dealing with one team and all of a sudden someone else ambushes us.
Yeah.
And that's what makes this game so enjoyable is just that sort of dynamic aspect that anything can happen and nothing is safe no matter where you are.
Yeah. I've kind of found like little victories that, when I lose, I'll like to not take so much stuff into the run with me.
Yeah.
So if I lose, like, and they try to loot me, it'll be like a kind of a lower tier gun and like maybe one health item and stuff. So it's like a kind of like, screw you to them. It's like, yeah, you got me, but you're not getting anything out of me.
I try to be spiteful too, where it's like, I know I'm not going to do much because I have a very specific objective that I know I don't need to be geared up.
Yeah.
So I purposely take like the worst crap just that if I do die, which, you probably will unless I ambush somebody.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's it. Joke's on you. You got the worst guns. You got no ammo. You killed me for nothing, you jabroni.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a really fun time and, you'll suffer a little bit, but it's just worth like the gameplay loop's really, really fun.
I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would because I played the beta and I was like, this seems pretty cool. I wasn't so hot to it before. Like I was just a little bit more skeptical. Like I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it. And then when I played the closed beta or it was a server sim, I think it was called. I was like, this is pretty cool. And then I told you about it. And then you bought it right before I did. You were more impulsed than I was.
Yeah.
And then once you got it, I was like, well, I have to get it now.
Yeah. Cause I saw, I was kind of hesitant, but the art style always drew me. And I was like, you know what? Like, I'm going to get it. It was like $40. I'm like, I'll get maybe, you know, hours of it. I'll probably get 20 to 40 hours, you know, just like I did with Hell Divers, right?
Same
I put
idea.
50 hours into Hell Divers, you know, so
I got
I'm like,
my money's worth out
got
of
my
that.
money's worth. So I was like, I'll get my money's worth out of it. And I'm actually enjoying it a lot more than I thought. And I think it's definitely worth $40 in my opinion. You'll get the enjoyment out of it.
Yeah, you just have to deal with the learning curve, which once you get over that, it's a really great time. It's Bungie, so like I said, it plays very, very well. It's just it's a much different game than you might be expecting. It's an extraction shooter, and it could be kind of brutal, but it's worth it if you stick with it.
Totally. And then one other game I'm playing, and I know you're playing it too. Maybe you'll talk about it a little bit more, and so I'll kind of lead it into you. But Crimson Desert.
Yeah, I finally got this in. I think it was like this Thursday when it finally arrived, and I'm only a few hours in, and I could tell that this is one of those games that you're going to chip away at it very slowly because there is a lot to do in this game, and there's a lot of really cool stuff to discover.
Yeah, no, there's a lot to discover. The world's really beautiful, like the engine. I think it's called Black Space Engine.
It's some unique, it's some in-house engine, which I always love because, you know, Unreal has its issues, and some of those more licensed and popular engines, like they're confined to certain things, right? So it's like this, when they cater it in-house, it's like they can sort of enact whatever game design and philosophies they want to, because the engine is built for that. Built
specifically for what they're trying to do. My biggest problem with the game right now is some of the bugs and the controls are really janky. It's really hard for me to grasp the controls in the game and do certain things. Like I'll try to do something and I'll press the wrong button because my brain is trained from other games that, you know, crouch is a certain button, but no, here it's, you know, you press, I think it's
L3. It's L3.
Yeah. So I'll try to do that, but then he'll like launch his little grappling hook thing instead, or, you know, so I think they're doing a patch that's coming out for console pretty soon that's going to fix some of the control issues.
It just needs some ironing out because some of the button mapping is really wonky and stupid. Like we were talking about before we were recording, how you have like this, I forgot what it's called, like the bringer of light or something like that, but it's sort of like it exposes weak points on enemies and does other things that like guide you certain areas or like certain highlightable, interactable objects. And to use it, you have to hold L1 and R1, let go of L1, keep R1 pressed, and then aim at wherever you're sort of aiming at, which clunky and stupid. No reason for that. It needs some control ironing, maybe some collision detection to be ironed out.
Yeah.
But it's a really gorgeous world. Like it looks incredible on PS5 Pro. I know you have a PS5 Pro as well. Yeah. So it's a real showcase on there. And really, this game is just like a more gigantic Tears of the Kingdom. Like the same idea. Like you have these, what do they call them? Faded Abyss?
Yeah. You're talking
it's
about,
like those platforming challenges in the sky you have to unlock, and then it has like the Assassin's Creed gimmick where you go to these bell towers and it demystifies the general area, and the map is massive. It's huge.
Did you see the Digital Foundry video where they're talking about this game where it said they walked or something from one end of the map to the other and it took 4 hours?
Yes, I did see that. Yeah, and that's I don't know what that entails, but you know, you zoom out of the map and it does look that massive. And I think that the thing with this game is that it's also very dense.
Yeah.
Because I typically have a problem with games that are just too big. Like we talked about Assassin's Creed Shadows, you and I, like how we love that game, but it's also just too freaking massive, especially when your only means of transportation is a horse.
Yeah.
Right. And also beyond that, there's only so many activities peppered throughout the giant world. Whereas with this, it seems like it has like the Skyrim effect, which is also what I've seen someone compare to, where there's a lot of like little things to discover, a lot of caves. Like that's why I like Tears of the Kingdom so much, is because you'll be walking around. There's a cave entrance. There's something else that might catch your eye. There's just a lot of dense things to discover and you can get distracted with. And it doesn't feel like it's just, you know, you're trying to get from point A to point B across a world that's like 6 miles long or something crazy.
I really don't like big open worlds where there's only 5 or 6 activities scattered throughout these giant worlds. And that was my biggest problem with Shadows, is you were doing the same 5 or 6 activities over and over and over, and the world was just so big. And it's like, you could have cut down like probably 3 zones out of this and it would have been much better.
Yeah, right? I agree. Yeah.
But yeah, one of my biggest gripes about the controls, I've told you about this when we were playing Marathon the other night, is the horseback riding. How in order to speed up the horse, you have to tap and hold X.
Yeah.
But then your camera is the right stick, and then your controls the left stick. So what I'm noticing is I'm holding X with my thumb and then using my index finger to control the camera, and then my left thumb is doing the steering, so it's like really uncomfortable. I really hope they fix that.
I don't know what they did with the bindings here, because it just, there's no excuse for it in my eyes. Like if anything, just have custom bindings, because I've told you too that one of my nitpicks is like they mapped the pickup button, which is contextual. You have to hold square over an object, you have to highlight it first. Otherwise, if you don't, you jump. And I hate when games do it where it's like you're picking up things, but it's also mapped to jump. So there's times where maybe you're not in the right spot and you jump accidentally. And again, like if you hold L1, you can highlight certain things, but it's like it's also sucks because now you're holding L1 everywhere to highlight things you're picking up. So it's stupid nitpicks that can get ironed out. Like, you know, we're talking like a lot of the negatives, but it's really like everything else about this game's been really great so far. Like the scale of it's really great. The combat's really fun and fast. Like that's another thing that I really like so far is that it reminds me of, did you ever play Shadow War back in the day? The Lord of the Rings game?
Yes. Yeah, I did play
it reminded me of that where it has like these sort of bigger scale battles and it's like really, you know, your combat, you can attack in any direction by pointing there, and you have like all these other sort of like action combat options, like the you hit R3, it's like a force push, you have your grapple hook thing. So there's a lot to do in this game. It's just one of those games where I feel like you're gonna be spending a ton of time. It's gonna go like 3 hours to go by and be like, wow, I didn't do shit for the last 3 hours. Yeah. I was like collecting stuff or doing this or that, which is great. I don't know if I'm going to finish it. I don't know what's going on with the story. Yeah. But I'm enjoying just the fact that I can just kind of chill out and discover puzzles or do whatever. Because that's one thing is the aesthetic in the world really, really helps with that kind of stuff.
You know, you make a good point where you'll play for multiple hours and then you'll say, oh, I did like one mission. It's just like Xenoblade Chronicles X. Play multiple hours and you'll just not accomplish very much. But it's still fun. It's still very fun.
Yeah, yeah. So it's this probably isn't a game for everybody. Like it's one of those. I know some of the Metacritic scores, like the scores are all over the place. Like I know it has like a 78 or like close to an 80.
Yeah.
But it's I would say it's a little bit divisive where some reviewers are critical that it's just there's so much crap to do and none of it's really meaningful. And you have the other side where it's like, no, I love this stuff because it's really fun to discover these little things and all these distractions and whatnot. So I don't know, for most people, like maybe wait for a sale, check it out. Yeah. But I think if you love these open world games where it's just like a billion things to do and you like the Zelda Tears of the Kingdom format or Red Dead Redemption 2, you're probably going to enjoy this just the same.
It's just like real life. A lot of crap to do, but not a lot of it's meaningful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Except here, we don't have to worry about bills and all that good stuff.
Exactly.
So at least there's that, I guess. Yeah. The other game I've been playing, because I've been hopping around a lot too, but I guess the bigger main one we got into as well with Ducey was Sonic Racing Crossroads because they released the incredible Mega Man DLC that we've been waiting for. It's really, really good. Yeah. They really just added Proto Man, Mega Man. They added the Rush car from I forgot what the Mega Man kart racer was called, but it was Japan only for a long time.
Yeah.
But they added a Wily Castle track that we played like, I don't know, 15 times because everyone was choosing that on the matchmaking. And it's really, really great. Yeah. I was really a big fan of Crossroads because I love the sense of speed and I love the drifts. Like, it's a little bit harder to get used to it sometimes. And, I know, like Ducey always ends up hitting walls and like that does happen. It's like sometimes you get stuck on what's like, what did I let go?
Yeah.
But that's for me, that's like, it does happen, but it's like a minor nitpick for me because I enjoy everything else about this game, like from the tracks, the cross-world intermissions. And again, like they've added so many characters and so much content just over the last few months that they've been kind of keeping things kind of fresh. And the Mega Man DLC is great because I haven't played the SpongeBob or I forget what was the other one they released.
It was Minecraft, SpongeBob.
Minecraft and SpongeBob and Pac-Man.
Pac-Man, yeah.
Yeah, so I have to go back and try those. But what we got to play online was a really great time. Like we weren't doing well when we were doing the festival thing where you collect the points to get like this, to level up like this Mega Man Battle Pass to get like decals from Mega Man 2 and music and other stuff. But it's really, really fun when you do like the actual racing. Like I was actually doing pretty well against other people when we were doing co-op on there.
Right. And that Mega Man Festival with the stickers that they had that you could unlock in the Battle Pass, that was really cool. And I wish I could have had more time to play it and unlock those stickers because there was one, it was the bosses from Mega Man 2.
Yes, the boss selection screen.
I was like, oh, I want that so bad. But it was like 900 or 1,000 points and we were at like 7 maybe when we stopped playing.
600-ish.
Yeah.
And we'll have to see if you can technically sign into my PS5 and grind through it because it ends tomorrow night at midnight. So it's like you'd have to go home and we have to grind through it for the next couple hours.
Yeah.
All right, Vito. Well, let's talk about some Die Hard.
Yes.
Once again, we were talking everything Die Hard. So, like I mentioned at the top of the show, we're gonna kind of briefly go through the original 3 movies because that's really what we want to talk about most. there was a couple. What was the last two called? They were called A Good Day to Die Hard, and what was the other one called?
So the fourth one was Live Free or Die Hard.
That's right.
And then Good Day to Die Hard was the fifth one.
Yeah, the fifth one I didn't like very much at all.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Yeah, like I think it came out 2013, so we won't really cover that one. Like I mean, that's really it. We just mentioned that it exists.
Yeah,
I'd say it's not a terrible movie. It's just not a good Die Hard movie at all. It kind of does that whole trope I hate where they have like the son of McClane, and it's sort of like the passing of the torch, and then they never made like a Die Hard movie after that.
Right, and the thing is right before that was the fourth one. They had his daughter in it, so it kind of was like repeating the same thing as the fourth one.
Yeah,
but the fourth one's actually like decent. It's just
it's a fun time.
Yeah,
I didn't mind that one as much. I actually enjoyed that one quite a bit. And then the fifth one was like, yeah, this didn't need to be made.
Yeah, they could have not done it.
So we're talking about the core 3 movies. Really, my favorites are Die Hard 1 and 2. 3 is a fun time, even though it's very different. So we'll cover that, and we'll talk about, like I said, most of the games from the Nintendo all the way up to GameCube, which had Die Hard Vendetta. And we won't cover a few. There's like Die Hard 2, Die Harder on the Commodore 64 and DOS that we didn't have access to and didn't want to play. And there's also a PC game that I probably could have tried to get running, but didn't want to bother with. It was Die Hard Nakatomi Plaza, and that's just sort of it looked like a standard first-person shooter of the early 2000s.
Yeah.
So the other games we'll cover, there's a lot of fun stuff to deal with there. So we'll get into bits and pieces of that. But Die Hard. One of the most iconic action movies of the 80s, one of my most favorite movies, and one of the biggest discussions about it is whether or not it's a Christmas movie, which I fall in the camp that is a Christmas movie because
I do too.
I do watch it traditionally for Christmas.
Every Christmas I watch it.
Yeah, it was released in 1988. It earned about $140 million on a budget of $35 million, which huge. That's a lot of money to be earned on a small budget, especially in 1988. It's a lot.
Yeah.
This one was directed by John McTiernan, who did movies like Predator, The Hunt for Red October, Last Action Hero, singular. I always wondered like what happened to him, and I guess he got busted for a lot of like legal stuff for like wiretapping and tax evasion stuff. He's kind of a not the best guy in recent years.
Yeah, and one of the last movies he directed, I think, was the remake of Rollerball, and it like flopped really hard.
Yeah, that was early 2000s.
Yeah,
and I think he made some stuff late into the 2000s. I didn't really take note of it, but his career definitely fell off in the 90s at some point.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because to me, John McTiernan, he's one of the masters of pacing, especially in like the earlier movies like Predator, Hunt for Red October, and Die Hard especially, where these movies are probably an hour 40 to 2 hours, but they're so well paced and so packed that there's no moments of real that drag on or anything, right? He just somehow masters things in such a way where it's like it just goes by so fast and you're enthralled the entire time. I notice he does do like a lot of tight shots with with his movies where it's like everything's sort of like, zoomed in or, everything's panned in a certain way. So he has a very distinct style that I think works for these kinds of movies that he does. And he directed the first Die Hard movie, and I think he did a great job with it. This was co-written by Jeb Stewart. This is Roland when I'm pointing it out, and Stephen D. D'Souza, which you might know, Vito, because I definitely know. He's the director and writer of one of our favorite other movies, Street Fighter the movie. Yeah. And the story with Die Hard it's really cut and dry in a sense. It's like John McClane. He's an LAPD detective. He goes to Nakatomi Plaza where his wife works to kind of surprise her because they're having like a Christmas party there. And he just happens upon a whole plot and a heist of these terrorists taking over. And John McClane is the one guy who's going to go to this giant skyscraper and take down all the terrorists and rescue all the hostages. Fantastic movie, end to end. This is generally one of my favorite action movies to revisit. It's something that I do watch every Christmas, but it's also something that I can watch on a whim if I feel like it because it's just so tight packed and fun. Yeah,
it's very fun to watch, and one of the best things about this movie to me is how John McClane's kind of like an everyman kind of guy.
Yeah. Because he's not like a Rambo or anything.
Right. Yeah. And that was the thing in the 80s. Like you look at the action movies, it was the big machismo, like roided out guy like Arnold and Stallone, just these jacked, kind of
one man army kind of guys.
One man army kind of guys.
Van Damme. Yeah. This is just a detective cop in LAPD, and that's all he is.
He like gets airsick when he flies, and he has to take off his shoes to, make fists with his toes to get rid of the airsickness when he lands. And, he's clearly outmatched, outgunned, the numbers are not in his favor. It was very different from a lot of the 80s action movies at the time.
Yeah, and I think again, like the way they presented the movie helped that a lot and kind of relay that, where it's like, he's usually trying to avoid conflict, right?
Exactly.
That's why he's traveling through vents. Like there's a lot of iconic scenes where he's just crawling through an vent and talking shit,
Yeah.
He has a lot of one-liners in here, which also makes it great. And of course, Bruce Willis is just incredible as John McClane. He really makes this movie.
Yeah.
And you have Hans Gruber, who is played by
Alan Rickman.
Alan Rickman, excuse me. And he does an amazing job as well because he's just like this cold, calculated terrorist who's ruthless. it's just a phenomenal movie. I imagine if you're listening to this podcast, you had to have seen this at some point.
Yeah.
So we're really just gushing about it because you always gush about Die Hard.
I don't know if you noticed this, but one of the henchmen is actually Vigo the Carpathian from Ghostbusters 2. Did you catch that?
I don't think I noticed it, but is it the guy with the long blonde hair?
Yeah, yes. It's in a ponytail, and he gets killed when they...
Because he has like a very noticeable face, but I never connected that with Ghostbusters.
Yeah, he's one of the guys that gets killed when McClane drops the C4 down the elevator shaft.
Yeah.
But anyway, the reason why I bring that up is because... because he's also in Ghostbusters 2, but that guy had a very kind of crazy life. I think his name was Wilhelm von Homburg or something. You should look him up and see the crazy crap that happened. And this guy was not a great guy.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, but anyway, just two extra cents in there for this discussion on Die Hard. But
and you had a note here, Vito, that said Frank Sinatra was contractually obligated to be offered the role for what would become John McClane, but he declined.
So, this Die Hard is based off a novel by Roger Thorpe. I think it's called Nothing Lasts Forever or something. And that novel was a sequel to another novel called The Detective. And they made that movie into a movie in the 60s starring Frank Sinatra. And he signed a multi-picture deal. So because this movie was based off another novel in that series, they had to contractually offer Frank Sinatra the role of John McClane, whose name isn't John McClane in the novel. It's something else, what I can't remember. But I just imagine if he would have said yes, like what kind of movie we would have got.
I imagine it probably would have been some musical number because they would not have Frank Sinatra in a movie without some musical.
Well, actually, The Detective is actually like a film noir kind of dark kind of detective story. So I imagine it would have been something like that because, he was probably in his mid 60s at this time.
Mm-hmm.
And mid 60s in the 1980s is very different than mid 60s in 2026 because you look at Tom Cruise who's doing crazy stunts.
Yeah.
He's like 65 or something. So I only imagine how different the movie would have been. But thankfully he said no. And we got Bruce Willis.
Yeah, I can't imagine this series having that many legs. If I'm not going to say Frank Sinatra would have bombed it, but it just would have been a totally different movie, and it would not be the Die Hard we know today.
No,
I don't think we'd be talking about it on this podcast.
No,
if
it wouldn't.
A Frank Sinatra gimmick.
It probably would have been just the one movie, and that was it.
Yeah. So Die Hard 1, worth seeing if you haven't for some reason. You should. Die Hard 2, it's sometimes called Die Hard 2, Die Harder. This was released July 1990, so a couple years after. This earned $240 million on a budget of $70 million. So obviously they saw the success of the first movie and increased the budget here. This was directed by Rennie Harlin, who did movies like Cliffhanger, Nightmare on Elm Street 4, Driven, Cutthroat Island, like a lot of outside of actually Cliffhanger. I can't even say it's like a Oscar-worthy movie. I love that movie, but it's, he does like I'll call these like B-tier movies, like B-tier action. They're not like Cutthroat Island. I remember the game about that, and like that's one of those movies that I think had one of those big budgets. It bombed. It's like one of those weird 90s things where they put so much money behind it. So he did a lot of B-tier movies. And then this was also written by Steven D'Souza again and Doug Richardson. And this movie is a little bit different where it takes place once again around Christmas. McClane is waiting for his wife in an airport because she's a flight attendant in this movie. So she's quite literally up in the air right now.
Yeah.
And a terrorist is taking over the airport and the air traffic control system. This is played by William Sadler, and he plays a character named Colonel William Stewart in this movie. And this whole movie is about John McClane trying to dispatch these terrorists and kill them, and also get all the planes that are to safe land. Because the idea here is that they're all circling around the airport because they have no way to land safely, and the idea is that they'll run out of fuel. So that's sort of like the time idea there, where it's like they have limited time, which you have to kind of dismiss the idea that like why don't they just land at another airport? Like they have fuel to circle around. Yeah. I imagine there has to be something nearby they can land, right? Yeah. So outside of that, if you dismiss that, this is a fantastic sequel. I got great reviews at the time. I think it's one of those sequels that is I don't want to say it's forgotten, but it's just I think the first movie has so much prestige behind it that people maybe dismiss this one, because it's a lesser sequel, but it's a really good sequel. Like I watched this pretty recently and I loved it. Yeah, no, I really like Die Hard 2. I think a lot of the people, I guess you'd say flaw. I don't think it's a flaw, but a lot of the quote unquote flaws is that it's basically just Die Hard again. It is. But to me, it's like the action scenes are crazier. Like literally, last fight's on the wing of a plane. Yeah, I didn't know that because it's like I think the director really tried to mimic McTiernan's style, right? Yeah. And he does it really, really well. Yeah. But they definitely injected like we need to go bigger, badder, and more explosive with things. Because there's like a scene where McClane like has this, he's in a plane, I think it is, or a jet or something, and he has like the emergency eject, and there's like this crazy shot of him flying through the air. Yeah. and like a giant explosion behind him, and he flips and he like lands safely somehow.
Yeah, he's in the ejector seat. Yeah,
and then there's like a whole gimmick where like he has a trail of gasoline leading up to some other thing. And he takes a lighter, lights it up, and it causes this massive explosion. But that also acts as like a landing guide for the planes and everything. So it's really over the top. It's almost like Bruckheimer-esque, but I don't care. Like it's such a fun movie the whole way, and it does the same thing where it's like, it's almost 2 hours, but it just goes by fast. It's very brisk.
And kind of also like Die Hard, there's a couple of the henchmen you might recognize. One of them is John Leguizamo.
Yes.
And then the other one is Robert Patrick, T-1000.
Yeah. Yes. I always recognize Robert Patrick. Yeah. And this was, like I said, 1990, and it feels like an early 90s movie, like just the way it looks and everything else. Like it feels like that. We're out of the 80s, and this is like, maybe they got new camera equipment or whatever the case, but it just feels like a 1990 movie to me.
Oh, yeah. I agree with that.
Last movie we'll touch on is the third movie in the trilogy. It's Die Hard with a Vengeance. This was released May 1995. This was an even bigger movie. This had a budget of $90 million, and it earned around $366 million. The VHS came out December 19th, 1995. The only reason I call that out is because that's how this movie is relevant to me. Is I remember we were like on a family trip up in like Sonora, I think it was. And we went to a Blockbuster and we're looking for a movie to rent. And that's also where I played the Virtual Boy, and I played Waterworld on there. But my dad rented this movie, and I just remember like loving this movie because I'd seen pieces of Die Hard 2 and pieces of Die Hard 1. So this is the first Die Hard movie I actually seen all the way through.
The same with me.
Yeah, and I loved it back then. I really enjoyed it. This was directed once again by John McTiernan. He came back for this, and this was written by someone named Jonathan Hensley. And in this movie, Jeremy Irons is a character named Simon. He's a terrorist extorting gold bullion from the Federal Reserve Bank in New York City with threats of detonating bombs all over the place. Like he tries to detonate a bomb in a subway and an elementary school. It's really insane. All that to me is just sort of a backdrop and sort of reason to make this movie take place across the entire city of New York.
Yeah,
that's all it is. Like one of the things I don't like about this movie is that Simon's just like a really inconsequential villain because he just has all these stupid riddles, and he's making John and Samuel L. Jackson in this as well. He's the partner to John McClane, and he plays a character named Zeus Carver. Yeah. And there's this really weird sort of racial tension thing that they're doing between, like they're constantly making racial jokes to each other. Like, why do white people do this? And it's like, it was such a weird thing to include in a movie in the 90s. It doesn't make any sense. It's just kind of like, they're trying to make jokes about it, but it's not really funny. It's just kind of dumb.
Yeah.
And they're doing puzzles where like, they have like 2 jugs, a 5-gallon jug and a 3-gallon jug. And to disarm the bomb, they have to fill one jug with exactly 4 gallons. So it's like one of those stupid math problems you see in school.
Yeah.
Right. So I think this is a lesser movie. Like it's still really, really fun and I enjoy it. But I think Die Hard works best when it's confined to a small area, like, in Nakatomi Plaza or an airport where John McClane has, he's within the confines of this area to work things out. This is just like, he's all over the city working out to, to disarm bombs and dispatch terrorists and all that stuff, because in the midst of him disarming bombs all over the city, the entire police force is locked up and doing that as well. And while that's happening, Simon is basically using that as sort of a cover up so you can take these dump trucks to take all the gold
out
from
the
reserve.
Yeah. So this movie actually started out not as a Die Hard movie. It was a Will Smith vehicle called Simon Says, and somehow it got morphed into a Die Hard 3. And so that's why to me it doesn't quite feel like a Die Hard.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense that it feels like a movie that's not Die Hard.
Right. And I think the way that they tried to really tie it as a Die Hard is they made Simon the brother of Hans from the first movie.
Yes.
And he's kind of out for, that's why he's going after McClane specifically. He wants revenge on him. So he's like doing all these stupid things to try to get McClane killed. Yeah.
I forgot what he said, but again, the whole gimmick is he says Simon Says.
Yeah.
There was one part where like he fools McClane and whatever. And he's like, well, you know what? I didn't say Simon Says. It's like, God dang it. Like, why did you? Yeah. That's so stupid. He's such a dumb villain. Here.
Yeah. He's not a great, the actor's really great, but the villain himself is kind of lame. And I think the same flaws like with this movie is what kind of undoes the next two as well, is that they're not in confined spaces. And like you said, I think Die Hard's the best when it's in the plaza, in Nakatomi Plaza, or at the airport, or in a confined area. And I think that's one of the big flaws with this one.
Yeah. This one just spent too much time trying to get so much of New York into it. And, there's parts where it's like they're traveling around in a cab and trying to get through traffic and everything like that. And, it does go by at a brisk pace because it's McTiernan and everything like that. But it just feels like they're trying to do so much at once and there's so much going on and none of it really matters because there's this heist going on and the police don't know because everyone's locked up on searching for these bombs. Because again, like with these dumb riddles, no one knows where the bombs exactly are, so they have to go figure them out. And it's a fine movie. Like I think the critics were a little bit harder on it because they said Simon sucks, which I think's fair.
Yeah,
Jeremy Irons is great.
Yeah,
but it didn't feel like a Die Hard movie, which makes perfect sense when you tell us it was a Will Smith movie originally. Yeah,
I still think it's worth a watch. I mean, all three of the original trilogy.
Yeah, they're great action movies.
Yeah, definitely watch it.
Yeah. All right, so we've covered the movies, Vito. Now we'll talk about all the games that were adapted from the 3 movies. So the first one we'll start with, a lot of people may know this from the Angry Video Game Nerds videos. This is Die Hard on the NES. This was released around January 1992. This was previously a DOS game. Like there's a DOS version that came out in 1989. There's a TurboGrafx 16/PC Engine version that came out in Japan around 1990. And there's also a Commodore 64 version. So this is one of those games that had multiple versions. A lot of them are different. The Commodore 64 version is a side view, which is much different. Like you still travel like in like in sort of an office building in Nakatomi, but it's a side scroller. TurboGrafx 16 version, you have more experience with this, but this actually started out as a different game that wasn't Die Hard.
Which makes perfect sense because the first, I think it's 2 levels are in a marshland.
Yeah, it's like a jungle and like a Vietnamese river.
I've been to the Fox Plaza in LA which doubled as a Nakatomi building. There's no marshland outside of there. I really do like the PC Engine / TurboGrafx. Well, it didn't come out in the US, but the PC Engine version. It's a like kind of top-down commando style kind of shooter. There's a bunch of different weapons. You could only have one weapon at a time, and your enemies will drop weapons. And if you're not paying attention, you'll drop your current weapon and pick up a specific weapon you may not want. And sometimes that gets you into trouble. As you take damage in that game, your wife beater changes colors until it like rips off. That's a great little touch. Yeah. It's really fun. Actually, this was a game I was looking for when I was in Japan, and I found a physical copy of it at a store in Tokyo.
I need to try it on an emulator because after you were talking about it, I was like, oh wow, you actually got it. I forgot you had bought it because I remember you showed me. And I was like, I thought it was really cool that it even existed.
Yeah, no, I didn't know that anything about it until I don't know if AVGN talked about it. And
he didn't know. It was strictly the NES version.
Yeah. I don't know how I found out, but I was like, wow, they got a Die Hard game. It looks cool in Japan. I want to play that. So I put it on my list when I went out there. And
it's like it's like the Adams Family. Wasn't that only in Japan too? Like that TG16 one?
Oh no. So that was US. There's the disc, the TurboGrafx CD version. That just I guess wasn't. It was just another weird one that no one knew about. You know? Yeah.
But we'll talk more about the NES one because that was released here, and this one is. I'll just start with the gate with this. Like it's interesting because the cover is very notable for the NES version. It has Nakatomi Plaza, but it almost looks like the Twin Towers exploding, which is crazy. I think that also has partly driven up the cost of this game because it's one of the rare NES games. I think I remember how the cart was. Was it like $200?
The cart's about 200.
200, I think. Yeah, and then the complete one, I'm sure, is probably
it's around
400 or 500. Yeah. So just on that, it's pretty noble just for that. The game itself has a wonderful concept. I think it's really great because the idea is it's very much adapted from the movie where you're going through each floor of Nakatomi Plaza. You're cleaning out all the terrorists. There's about 40 in the game. You have a variety of weapons like pistols, SMGs. There's flamethrowers, flashbangs. Health is restored by using soda and snack machines. And one of the more interesting mechanics in this game is a foot meter, where there's shattered glass all around. Like if you shoot just in the area, like glass falls on the ground, and your feet get damaged, and you have to walk. If you walk through it, like it actually makes you walk slower. And if your damage goes up, your feet damage goes up, then you just like he has less mobility, and you can only heal him with med kits, which I guess is just like bandaging it up.
Yeah.
This game is really freaking hard. I don't know how far you've gotten with it. I tried it over this week, and again, I love the concept. I think the execution is bad, but again, I think it's one of those cases like most of these adapted games where they probably had no time to port it, no time to create it. It was published by Activision, so they're probably like, hey, like we need to get this out because the movie is 1988. This is 1992, so 4 years after the fact, they're releasing a Die Hard game.
Yeah.
So this game definitely has problems. I think it's really, really freaking difficult. But what did you feel about this one?
So like I've said before, I have soft spots for games that try to do something novel. And this is one of them. I really think it follows the plot of the movie very well. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is that there's multiple endings. And so if you don't do the right steps, you'll get the bad ending or the mediocre ending. For example, if you don't notify the police or the walkie-talkie, they'll escape. the guys will escape because there's no one to
I didn't know that. That's crazy.
So like you have to find one of the first goons that you kill on the first floor drops a radio. And then with the radio, you have to go to the roof. There's a enemy on the roof that has a key. You get the key and then you go onto the helipad. And at that point you could notify the police. And that's one of the steps you need to do. The concept of the foot meter and the separate from the health meter, I think is really interesting because that's a plot of the movie. He's barefoot, you know? And then further, I mean, you have to, there's a timer. So Theo, the techie goon, he's trying to crack the safe and you have a certain time limit to basically beat the game. And there's a step where, you could actually slow the timer down. What you have to do is you have to kill a goon on one of the floors that has a map. It shows where this computer system is. And then you have to get access to the maintenance elevator, I guess it is, which you need a key or something for. And you could only get to it if you crawl through vents on a certain floor. You need to take that down to the basement and then blow up the computer lab or whatever it is. I forgot exactly what it is. And that'll give you like an extra, I don't even know how many minutes, but it'll give you more time to finish the game. Yeah. What's also interesting is, like you said, there's exactly 40 goons in the game. And at a certain point, the fight with Hans unlocks with so much time left. And depending on how many guys you killed, you'll have to kill all those guys in the room with Hans.
Yes.
So like if you killed only 20, you're gonna have 20 more to kill at the end.
Yes, so that's why you have to be conscious about how many you're dispatching and make sure the floors are cleared, which again, like you said, you also have a time limit of sorts that also is ticking away. So there's a lot to manage in this game. And I think, again, like I love the idea. It's almost like an adventure game. Yeah. And the concept is really unique for an NES game, especially for 1992. Yeah. Especially when you got like, my comparison is like Terminator 2, which was a pretty crappy beat 'em up that we have fondness for. Yeah. And it did try to kind of follow the beats of the movie with these set pieces, but this actually feels like it's trying to adapt the plot of the movie and some of the mechanics from it as well. It's just the execution and how they handle it. It's just, there's probably NES limitations. Again, time limits on development. It's hard because you can only shoot in 4 directions initially with your handgun. You get an SMG that fires in a spray, but the thing too is that enemies are a lot faster than you and they have much better aim. And you have 1 life. That's the big challenge of this game too. Yeah, no, I've gotten through it with save states and a guide. I've learned that you have to get the SMG and kind of fire while turning to kind of get them. You have to do like a wave. I found that to be most effective because even if the enemies go off screen, you can still kill them, which is helpful because the screen only displays a certain vicinity around you. Like it does the NES effect where it has to sort of like, I won't say load the screen, but the parts off screen are blackened, and then once you enter the vicinity, it lights up because they just can't display that part of the screen. Yeah, and so that, from what I understand, is so I have this cart and the manual in a repro box. The way I understand is that was purposeful. They called it like blind spot something, which makes sense. Like McLean may not be able to see it everywhere. They don't want you to be able to see around. They wanted to try to make it quote unquote realistic. Like you can't see around the corner unless you're like looking around the corner, and that presents obstacles at times because you'll go around a corner and there'll be guys ready to shoot you. One other thing I wanted to mention, and I haven't verified this, but one other reason why this game might be so expensive now is I've heard that it was a Toys R Us exclusive release. Oh, really? That'd be really interesting if that was the case. I haven't verified that, but it makes sense to me if that was part of the reason. It might be because like the whole Twin Tower things on the front isn't going to affect the value that much. It's really just because it's more scarce, right? And a lot of people are holding on this because if you grew up with Die Hard like we did, it's part of our generation. So you're probably not going to sell this as much as other games too. That's a lot. There's multiple factors why it's so expensive. That's probably a big one is that it was an exclusive Toys R Us, which I should look up because I didn't read anything on it. But also was surprising because most movie-based games from this era aren't that expensive because they're not good. Just this isn't like the worst game you'll play. It's not like the upper echelon or anything like that. But it's not that bad and it shouldn't be this expensive, but it is. Yeah. Did you know about this as a kid? Because I didn't know about this until the AVGN video. No. So I remember seeing it because we always looked in magazines and there was like Funkoland. We saw Die Hard, right? But I never saw it anywhere for sale, for rent. I knew it existed, but I never had access to it. And I've never seen it until, you have a copy. But even then it's like, you got that like way later in life. Yeah. But no one I knew had this game. I just feel like it was one of those things where it would make perfect sense that it was a Toys R Us exclusive because no one I knew had it. We had Total Recall. We had, a lot of movie-based games. and this was nowhere to be found as far as I could find.
Right, and I've never seen in person a complete copy. I've seen random carts, and I got mine a loose cart in Portland at the Portland Retro Gaming Expo a couple years ago. Then I got the manual separately later, but I've never seen a complete copy in person. I've seen them on eBay for upwards of $500-$600, even more sometimes. So yeah, I think it makes sense to me that it would be a store exclusive. But again, I haven't verified that.
Yeah. And overall, you should check this out just for fun. Like, just load it up on an emulator. Like, don't go out and pay $200 because,
unless you're crazy like me.
Well, like we buy games because it's like, you have funds from whatever. But it's like, I wouldn't recommend most people go pay $200 for this. Like, it's not worth it that much, really. But you'll get your fill out of the emulation because there's probably game genie cheats that'll help. But it's a really interesting game to check out. It does a lot of unique things that you really don't see on most NES games. And it definitely demands repetition because you're not going to get through this in one run with one life. Like, they really demand that you learn the layouts, you learn where everything is. Because again, you have time limits. Enemies are pretty deadly, and you're McClane. Like, you're not a one-man army in this game, In
a sense, it's exactly like the movie. You're unmatched, you're outgunned,
the
enemies are very deadly. So yeah, they kind of nailed it in that respect. And I think it is better than Terminator 2 for NES.
Oh, it is. I would say even just for the concept alone, it is. And the AVG Envio maybe isn't too inaccurate because he does go nuts on it because of how hard it is and everything like that. Check that out too because it's a really funny video. And, there are a lot of things that are negative about this game, but I'm not so hard on it because I at least acknowledge that, like I said, the concept is really, really cool. I think it's a really great idea.
Yeah, agreed.
The next thing we'll cover, since we're skipping Die Hard 2 on DOS, is one of my favorites in this that we're talking about today. It's Die Hard Arcade on the Saturn. This was known as Dynamite Deca in Japan. This was released August 1996 in arcades, March 1997 for Saturn. This was this is one of those things where I think there's a misconception that it was Dynamite Deca first and they got converted to a Die Hard game. But this is one of the weird, ironic instances where they made this as a Die Hard game and they didn't have the publishing rights in Japan for Die Hard and they turned it into its own game.
Yeah, see, I thought it was the other way. I thought it was Dynamite Deca and then they licensed it.
Yeah, because it's always been that case where they reskin a Japanese arcade game and they make it into like a US property because looking at this and playing it doesn't look like Die Hard. It's it's like there's ideas and John McClane's in it, but it's like if you look at this from screenshots, you probably couldn't make this out. This was John McClane.
Right. I mean, really, the only Die Hard things about it are John McClane and the Nakatomi building. Literally everything else is like this Bat-esque kind of crazy, story and other supporting characters and villains. So.
Yeah, and this was published by Sega, is developed by Sega AM1, and then there was a sequel to this that was called Dynamite Cop on the Dreamcast. That's a really fun time. I don't know if have you gotten that one yet, Vito? Because I know you got a Dreamcast pretty recently.
No. I played it on the GDMU, but I don't actually own a physical copy. But the villain is the same in that.
Yeah, yeah. So this is a 3D beat 'em up. So it's think Fighting Force, but not crap.
Yeah, exactly.
This was said to be the first beat 'em up that used texture mapped 3D models. Which you can tell, like it looks pretty nice, I would say, especially for a Saturn game, because I played the Saturn version on an emulator. It looks pretty nice if it looks like a Sega game from the time. The best way I can describe this is sort of like a Final Fight Virtua Fighter game, but with Die Hard and like a 3D beat 'em up space.
Yeah, that's good.
It's really cool. This was also the last game developed by Sega Technical Institute. They were the ones who developed Sonic 2 and a bunch of other big Sega games. I'm not sure why they shut down. Maybe it's just one of those things where Sega, wasn't using them after this, and they said no more. This does have a 2-player co-op mode where you're playing as John McClane and someone named Chris Thompson. And the story in here is that John and Chris have to rescue Caroline Powell, who's the president's daughter, from terrorists. And some of the bosses in here are really crazy. Like there's a biker named Hog. Yeah. There's a sort of Mexican luchador named Jocko, and there's a sumo wrestler named Mr. Oishi. You fight a general named Mr. Tubbs, and the final boss name is Wolf White Fang Hongo.
Yeah, Wolf Hongo.
Wolf Hongo. What a freaking name this is. And one of the cool gimmicks about this is that if you do beat this game in co-op mode, you do like a double dragon gimmick at the top of a skyscraper where you both battle it out, and whoever wins gets the admiration of the president's daughter, like she gives you more appreciation or something like that. It's really silly. I'd like to try that out. I don't know.
No, we gotta do that sometime.
Yeah. So briefly before we get into our impressions of this, because we have a lot to say. Well, not a lot, but we do love this game. I got a couple of reviews from the magazines at the time. EGM reviewed this in issue 93, April 1997. These are out of 10, so they give it a 6.5, an 8, a 7, and an 8. Best feature, goofy. Worst feature, short. They said that they didn't mind it was so nuts and over the top, and it was basically a Virtua Fighter combined with Final Fight. Criticisms were around the mediocre enemies and length, and one reviewer said it's the slickest ripoff of Final Fight, which I'd say that's fair. And also, we also have to consider that when this came out, 3D beat-em-ups really weren't too big of a thing.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were pretty terrible. And this is a really fun and competent one.
Yeah.
GamePro reviewed this, issue 103, April 1997. These are out of 5 as well. They gave graphics a 4.5, sound a 4.5, control 4.5, fun factor 4.5. They liked the crisp and colorful graphics and animated cutscenes, but they did note that it was short, but fans of Streets of Rage will love it and suggested renting it first. One of the gimmicks this game does have is it has... what's it called? Deep Scan. It's like this old arcade game.
Yeah.
It's a Sega game from 1979.
Yeah.
And you're like, why the hell is this in this game, in the Saturn version? The whole reason they put it there is so you can earn extra continues because this game is short, but it is kind of hard.
It's difficult.
But the idea is you play Deep Scan, and every 200 points, you get an extra credit for the main game. So at some point, if you play enough Deep Scan, which you get 10, 15 credits, you could probably breeze through this game pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I went through like 3 or 4 levels, and I was like, crap, I used all 10 of my lives.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. But what did you think of this one, Vito? Because I really enjoy this one.
I love this game. I have a physical copy of it.
I need to find one because it's a little bit harder to find.
It's so goofy. Like it's just I'll always get a good laugh, especially like with the weapons that you can pick up. Like there's a early segment where there's a grandfather clock right there, and McClane literally picks it up and you can use it as a weapon. One of the things that kind of bugs me is some of the guns like don't damage enemies a lot. Like you'll literally get a 50 caliber and you think it would kill an enemy in one hit,
but it'll shred them, but
right.
It does nothing.
It does like you have to hit them like 4 or 5 times to kill like one enemy with the 50 caliber.
Yeah.
It's just, and then all the villains are just so over the top. Like there was I don't know if it was he had like all this armor on. He looked like a cop. He was just really goofy. He kept like
he looked like he was wearing like football gear.
Yeah,
he was doing wrestling moves. Yeah, you find him like in this lobby.
Yeah, and he kept like suplexing me, and I lost a couple lives on him. I got as far as there's like a roof. You get on the roof, and there's like a satellite dish spinning around, and you have to avoid that. And then I lost my I think 8th continue, and that was it. I really like how McClane's clothing takes damage throughout the game. So like he looks like a bum by the end of the game. Like all of his clothes are tattered.
Yeah, and there's some really cool cutscenes in here because it's fun because it feels like an arcade game because the cutscenes are like literally 1 or 2 seconds long. Like it'll cut to the Wolf Hongo, who's like he's like in this throne room that looks like Mr. X's throne room in Streets of Rage 2. And they'll cut to him after certain level or sections, and he's just like screaming on the phone, like he's jabbering. Yeah. Like there's a voice clip. I have no idea what it says because it's just like muffled. So it does that where it's like it intersperses these weird action cutscenes that are like 2 or 3 seconds long. Yeah. And there's actually QuickTime events in here, which is really cool too, where McClane he might be running through a hallway and it says like jump or hit kick in the middle of it, and if you hit kick, like he'll basically do a drop kick on an enemy or something. Or there's one where it's like you're in the I think it's like a parking garage and it says jump, and you have to jump out of the way of like this I think it's like a bus coming at you careening where the worst is like you might take some damage right away, which sucks because it does do a good amount of damage. But the idea is like you do if you have a successful QTE, then you get this cool cutscene and there's like a slow-mo gimmick. So there's a lot of cool stuff in here that I think was a little bit ahead of its time for its time, especially in 96. The beat 'em up aspects are really fun. There's actually a pretty good variety of moves, I think. Like there's some wrestling moves, some grabs. The one thing that does suck, and it's a little bit of a challenge I think most 3D games had at the time, is moving on the Y-axis. Where some enemies will come at you at a certain angle and maybe you're not lined up with them, so you have to go up, and it's really slow to move up or down on the screen. But again, that's like a minor nitpick, and it's I hate to say of the time, but it was of the time. Like they haven't figured out 3D movement just yet. And
another nitpick I have, but this was also common in beat 'em ups, is you at least I could be interrupted with moves, but then I wouldn't be able to interrupt the bad guy when they're trying to hit you.
Yeah, that's pure arcade nonsense right there is what that is.
That always annoys me. One villain I want to point out is there's an early segment where you're fighting a bunch of guys in the restroom, and then I think the stall breaks and there's a dude in his underwear just standing there.
Well, he's like taking a piss back there.
Yeah, but he's just in his underwear.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, there's the guy at the urinal taking a piss. He eventually fights you, and then you're right, you do knock off the stall door, and some guy's just in his underwear fighting you.
Yeah, it's like
really bizarre.
This is an office building. What are you doing in there?
It's really bizarre. That's right. I was laughing really hard. So this game is over the top. It's goofy. absolutely worth checking out. Go find the arcade version or emulate the Saturn version. Because I think this is a little bit pricey complete if you find it. I think it's like 120, somewhere around there.
Somewhere,
100.
yeah.
And I'm sure disc version is probably like 30 or 40 bucks, something like that. But also you have to have a Saturn, which, you know, you and I we like the Saturn, but a lot of people don't.
No.
So, but definitely check this out because it's over the top. It's nonsense. It's really fun. It's a great beat 'em up for 1996.
Yeah, and I think as far as the Die Hard games go, that Die Hard Arcade's probably my favorite one.
So the next one we'll move on to is one that most people probably are most aware of and have played. It's Die Hard Trilogy. This was released on the PS1, Saturn, and there was a PC version. The PS1 version was September 1996, and the Saturn and PC versions were January 1997. This was developed by Probe. They did a lot of games back in the day. Like they did a lot of 16-bit games. They did ports. I believe they were the ones who ported Mortal Kombat on Sega, if I recall.
I think so, yeah.
I think, yeah, and they've done a lot of other stuff since then. I don't think they're around now, I'm sure. If anything, they're probably consolidating to some other company. And this was published by Fox Interactive. So the Die Hard with a Vengeance segment, because I guess we'll talk about that first, this is 3 distinct games, which is really crazy and really interesting for the time. So Die Hard 1 is sort of like this arcade shooter. Like the camera is sitting above McClane and you're like in a big area. You have to dispatch all the terrorists and also rescue all the hostages. And then once you complete a floor, because I think there's like 19 of them in Nakatomi Plaza, then you have to disarm a bomb that's somewhere in the level. It's basically just some way to get you out of the level quickly. That's all that's there for, is that they don't want you hanging around, lingering, getting lost, even though you have to seek the bomb out. It's using an elevator or like a hallway or something, so it just forwards you to the next level. Die Hard 2, Die Harder is a light gun shooter, which is really cool. It's like Time Crisis. It has light gun support on PS1, or you can use the D-pad, which works, but it's not recommended.
It's difficult.
Yeah, and Die Hard with a Vengeance it's a pretty impressive open world. I don't want to call it racing game, but it's like a driving game where you're in a cab or a dump truck or like a sports car, and you have your radar, which tells you exactly where a bomb is, and you have to like literally run into it, which is funny, not disarm it. You're running into it to explode. Otherwise, if you run out of time, New York City just explodes. And it's crazy because the game over screen I totally forgot about until I looked, I played this the other night, was when the city explodes, you see the World Trade Center behind it, and it just gets enveloped in explosives. And it's like, holy crap. Yeah. This is obviously pre 9/11, but that's, it's always weird for me to see the Twin Towers in a game now when, we lived through that attack happening. So that was really kind of shocking in some sense for me.
It's also funny that it's like an atomic explosion when, the bombs, I mean, in the movie, they're big, but they're nowhere near
not
as big.
city clearing big. Yeah. So the With the Vengeance part was actually developed first, and it was actually supposed to be a standalone release until Fox said, no, we got to have the game more closely linked to the movie. So that's when this development team, which was actually led by a smaller, younger developer team, because at this time Pro was working on Alien Trilogy. So they were tied up in that. And then they basically assigned all the younger programmers, designers to make this. And sometimes that works out really great because GoldenEye kind of had that same story where Rare was comprised of a bunch of like these younger, really hungry developers, and they had free from to do whatever they want. From what I read with Die Hard Trilogies, they didn't really have a game design doc set. It was really just kind of flying by the seat of their pants, developing ideas that they wanted to do and including them. And then they included them in the design doc after the fact. And it worked out because all these 3 game types, while, they're not like the most polished, they're all really, really fun just because of how much variety there is and how well thought out they are.
Yeah.
And on top of that, the game was banned in Germany because of the extreme violence. Like you could run over pedestrians, and there's actually a lot of, like even in Die Hard 2 with the Lycan game, like there's like bloody explosions and stuff, more than you'd expect. So each game is pretty lengthy. I've never finished any of them because they're also really, really hard. The Die Hard, the first game, you have to get through all 20 floors, and you can save in between them, but you really have one life, and I think you collect more if you get a certain score. The light gun shooter, I don't know how many levels that has, but that gets pretty hard, and that's definitely recommended with the light gun shooter.
Yeah.
And With a Vengeance is probably the most difficult for me because the cab you control is really difficult to control. Like it's really stiff, and then you have like a quick turn button that turns you 180, which doesn't help when you're trying to make like a sharp right, because one cool thing this game does is you have your Samuel L. Jackson proxy who sounds nothing like him. He's actually kind of guiding you like, turn right here, turn left. It's actually kind of cool if you do that. And I would say like in that respect, New York City in the third game is actually pretty big for a PS1 game. Like it's a pretty large open world.
Yeah, I agree.
Have you played much of this one? Because I think you played more of the Saturn version.
Yeah,
right?
so I own this on Saturn as well. I like this game. I think visually it doesn't look super great. anymore. It might, maybe back in the day it looked good. I think Die Hard Arcade still looks good, and this really doesn't.
Ages a little bit less. Yeah, this ages worse for sure. Especially because even the first game, I actually think it has one of the better camera systems on PS1. Because again, this is a pretty early PS1 game. This was September 96. PS1 came out September 95. So they still hadn't quite figured out camera work, but it actually works because it doesn't get in the way in Die Hard 1. And it also has a really cool mini map because you're supposed to find all the terrorists and the hostages, and you can actually select and it zooms out. So you have a pretty good view of the general area on the floor you're on. And also it has a really cool gimmick where if you're up against a wall, rather than get blocked by the wall, it actually makes it transparent, which I think is a really sort of crafty way to deal with the camera, because you have no camera control in this. You use a D-pad, so it's really stiff.
Yeah.
He has an awkward strafe as well. The first game is really, really fun, I think, in that respect, because it really just feels like an arcade shooter in every respect, right? Each floor is like that. Die Hard 2, it's a little bit different because it's like a shooter, and Die Hard 3 is, I'd say, the least of the three because the time limit is very, very strict.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got a couple reviews here. So the PS1 version, I couldn't find a review in GamePro, which is surprising because I checked from like July 1996 to February 1997. For some reason, they just didn't review the PS1 version, so maybe they didn't get a copy. They did review the Saturn version in issue 103, April 1997. This got a 3.5 for graphics, 4.0 for a sound, 3.5 for control, 4.5 for fun factor, and this is comparing it to the PS1 version. So they said it's graphically inferior to the PS1 version, particularly die harder with slowdown and bad pixelation. And the reviewer did mention that it needed gun calibration options because the controls are super sensitive, but they said it's a fun time otherwise. EGM did review the PS1 version in issue 86, September 1996, and they gave it a 9 out of 10, 8.5, 9, 8.5, so very high reviews. That's very high marks for this game. Best feature, 3-in-1. Worst feature, there's no gun, which I don't know what that means.
Like it didn't get packed with a gun?
I guess, yeah, which is kind of silly because that would just made the game more expensive. And I mean, Time Crisis came out, I think it was 97. That probably cost a lot more with the gun con because it was the packing, right? So small concession, I would say. If you have a light gun, great. If not, I think this also has mouse support too if you have the PS1 mouse.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. All reviewers loved the variety between the three different games, and they said that each could have been a great standalone game. They mentioned that it had great graphics and diverse gameplay with really minor complaints about the controls, especially the aiming the cursor in Die Hard, which I think is valid because that game, you know, it's like you can survive a few hits, but when there's a lot of enemies on the screen at once and you're scrolling the cursor, it can really, really suck.
Yeah, I think now, you know, I didn't play this originally back in, 96 when it came out, or 97. Now playing the light gun segment without a light gun is very hard.
Yeah.
And the driving is very hard. So I really like the first third-person shooter original Die Hard segment of it. The other two, I can't really play that.
Yeah, your enjoyment really depends on, one, what peripheral you have for Die Hard 2, and 3, if you can. Basically, like, you have to die multiple times in 3 to learn where the bombs are and how to get a grasp on the controls, which is, what they intend. Like, you're supposed to not do this on one fell swoop.
Yeah.
But for some people, that's going to be hard to deal with because, again, this is 30 years old now.
Yeah.
This is a lot harder to get into and deal with. Granted, there are cheats that help. I'm sure there's like an infinite timer and whatever else. I know on the Die Hard 1, like, you get infinite health, and I don't know what other cheats there are, but there's a lot. So it's like you can kind of cheat through it if you want to. But in terms of just playing this game as it is, it's definitely... 1 is the best, then 2 and 3 kind of goes in order, which ironically is kind of how I see the movies in that respect too. So it makes sense, right?
So it follows the movies pretty well.
It does. Yeah, it does. That's the perfect way to put it. Yeah. All right. So we're going to cover 2 more games before we wrap the episode up. So the first one here is Die Hard Trilogy 2 Viva Las Vegas. This was released March 2000 for PS1 and Windows. This was developed by N-Space this time and published by Fox Interactive. N-Space did a lot of games back then. They did Duke Nukem Time to Kill, Land of the Babes. They did Geist on GameCube, which was like that ghost first-person shooter game that most no one played and probably doesn't remember. Rugrats on PS1, and they did a lot of DS ports of like Call of Duty and all these other bigger games on DS.
Wait, they did Rugrats?
Yeah. I know that's one of your favorites. I'm sure you played the shit out of one back then. Yeah. So this one is a lot different than the first Die Hard trilogy. This, rather than have 3 distinct standalone games that can, follow a movie, this has its own story, and it includes the 3 game types, but in a linear fashion. So like the first area is like an arcade kind of a third-person game. Second level is a light gun shooter, and so on. And like you get like a driving segment at some point. The story here is that McClane is living in New York and he gets a call from Kenny Sinclair, his old buddy, and the NYPD to come to Las Vegas because Kenny's now the new warden at Mesa Grande prison and he invited McClane to a party. So he's going to have a little shindig at the prison apparently.
Yeah.
So of course a prison riot breaks out and prisoner Klaus von Hogg, I think that's how to pronounce it, he breaks out and McClane once again has to deal with terrorists because they're trying to take over Las Vegas, I'm sure the world at some point. And the big twist here is that your buddy Kenny Sinclair was actually part of the plot to go to Las Vegas. So I mentioned this when you were playing her. I was like, how stupid of a villain you have to be that your great buddy is John McClane, who's dealt with at least 3 terrorists between Die Hard 1, 2, and 3. Yeah. And you have this plot to take over Las Vegas with your fellow terrorists, and you invite John McClane to a party. Like what?
He'll never see this coming, and he won't be able to stop me.
Yeah. So it always starts off on a silly foot to begin with. It's really, really ridiculous. So this is interesting because it does have support for mouse, light guns, and a steering wheel. I have no idea how this game intends you to switch through all those while you're playing.
No idea.
Because, you have 2 controller ports on the PS1, so you could realistically have the controller in one and then switch out your light gun and your steering wheel in the other. I don't know. It's a little silly. I'll go with the reviews on this first because this game, it's not bad. I think it's just a poorly aged game. This is also a later PS1 release because it came out in 2000 and the PS2 was coming out October of that year. So this is one of those games that probably had a smaller budget, smaller dev team, and just, they needed to make a game for some reason. I don't know if it's to retain the license or whatever, but they decided to make their own standalone game. And, it's not terrible. Like I played a few levels and it's all right, but we'll get to that in a second. So reviews, EGM reviewed this issue 129, April 2000. They gave it a 6.5, a 6, 5.5, 6.5. Best feature, shooting style play, which is the third person segments. I agree with that. Worst feature, the best feature was shooting style play. The worst feature was third person action mode. So they thought the light gun shooter segment was the best, which I agree with. Yeah, okay. Excuse me, I had it backwards. Yeah. They said that overall it's a collection of barely above average games that does nothing to improve the original. They know the poor graphics with clipping and glitches and the AI being very dumb or very smart. The light gun portions were their favorites, and one reviewer said it can't touch Siphon Filter, and much of the game just isn't fun, but it's worth a rental, which I agree with. I think this is a very average game. It doesn't do anything great, but it doesn't do anything drastically terrible.
Yeah.
GamePro reviewed this, issue 139, April 2000. They gave graphics a 4, sound a 4, control 4.5, fun factor 4.5. And they really liked this game, surprisingly. They were the polar opposite of EGM. They thought the textures were highly detailed, but also know the environments are sparse and dark. They also liked the variety of play, but know the wonky collision detection. And they spoke of the frustrating driving sequences and third-person sections were more so because of the bad collision detections and one life, which I agree with. The collision detection in this game is awful.
Yeah, it's bad.
You get caught up on like stupid office chairs. You get caught on doors. McClane has this awkward thing where like he'll put his back against like a surface and get stuck there for some reason. So overall, like I said, this game tries. I think the ambition's there with this game, but the execution is just a little bit off the mark because it's 3. They tried to do 3 different games like the original did, and all of them are just kind of unremarkable. I do think the Lycan segments are really fun. They're just really, really long. Like the second level is just exceptionally long for no reason.
Well, in the brief amount of time I played it here, I think the light gun segment using the controller was much easier to deal with than it was in the first one.
It was, yeah. It's a little bit easier for sure.
It's fine. Like it's a fine game. The first level kind of bothered me because it's very, I don't know if I'm going to say labyrinthine-like.
I would say labyrinth-like. I have no idea. Some of those words jumble my words.
Yeah. So I that's a flaw I have with some of these old games. I don't like it when they put you in these maze-like levels with no map and you just you end up backtracking a lot.
It's purposely made to be complex to lengthen the mission, which it does need to do because it's like when I was guiding you through it, because I had to do that myself and I had to learn the layout. What it does, it just makes you get lost purposely so you can eventually wrap around in a giant circle is what it is.
Yeah.
Because all that crap it made you let you do in the beginning is just so you could get to a control room in the prison, which is the most ridiculous way to get there. Like I can't imagine a prison being laid out that way where there's like one giant way to go through all these hallways, doorways, stairs where it's like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah. No prison's going to be designed like that.
Yeah. It does have a cool first person mode, which again, not terribly common on the PS1. And that's great because you can destroy cameras and other things. And, the aiming here isn't great. It has generous auto aim, which it really needs.
Yeah.
Because the enemies they have better aim than you, and you have a variety of weapons like shotguns. You get like a rocket launcher at some point and an SMG. I think this is just a totally fine action game. Probably shouldn't have been called Die Hard. Like if they called it anything else, I think it would have been fine. Because the only relevance it has to Die Hard are the characters and the plot that's loosely based on a Die Hard sort of property, right? It's just like McClane's here, he's killing terrorists again, same old stuff, but now we're in Vegas. Fine game. Like I think the EGM review is probably more fair to it because, you know, I'm a little bit more forgiving of this because, like I said, the ideas are there. Like it has a really cool bunch of cool comp sets, but it just feels like an old PS1 game, but the PS1 is 5 years old at this point. You know? All right, Vito, we'll get on to the last one. And unfortunately, this is the worst one, I think, here. I think it's safe to say, but this one also has a kind of a cool story attached to it, so at least there's that. This is Die Hard Vendetta. This was released November 2003 on the GameCube, only in the US, and then June 2003 on Xbox and PS2 in Europe. They got those versions for whatever reason. I don't know why they weren't ported here. Maybe because this game probably sold poorly, and maybe they're just like, we're not going to bother with, you know, releasing it in the US. This is developed by Bits Studios and published by Vivendi Universal and Fox Interactive. The story here is that it takes place 5 years after the third movie, and McClane must save his daughter Lucy, an LAPD officer from Piet Gruber, sons of Hans Gruber. So that's, again, that loose tie to the series. Yeah. This is kind of like the fourth movie or the fifth movie, but, you know, 20 years or 10 years later, I should say, in 2003. Reginald Bell Johnson, he does reprise his role here as Sergeant Al Powell, which is probably the only great thing I like about this game is that he's in here. And, you know, his performance isn't great because the script isn't great and the game is just not good. But, you know, you love Carl Winslow, so it's great to have him here at least. I'm sure they gave him a nice little paycheck for this. And in this game, like, they tried to inject a lot of different things, like McClane can hold enemies hostage. There's stealth in here. There's a fun story about this game that it was a totally different game when it started out. The original game was called Muzzle Velocity. It starred an LAPD SWAT member named Jack who tries to get control of a crime wave in LA. The studio partnered with Fox Interactive, and this is actually supposed to be a Speed 2 cruise control game. Like, you remember Speed 2, Vito? Like,
unfortunately.
Right. Speed, one of my favorite action movies of the early 90s. I think it was like 93.
Yeah, somewhere around
Really, really good movie. I watched that, I don't know, a year or two ago, and it holds up very, very well. It's just really, really good. Yeah. I remember watching the second movie back then. I was like, wow, this is just not good. It had Sandra Bullock was in it, and was it Jason Patrick? Right? Yeah. I don't remember much about the movie other than even my dad didn't like it, which says a lot because he likes a lot of action movies, whether they're good or not, right? Once that movie bombed, pun not intended there, they decided that it wasn't going to happen. They're like, we're not going to make a game out of this. So they basically want to make it Die Hard 64. And it was supposed to come out in January 1999, but again, like they delayed that because it bombed so badly. And I don't even know what year Speed 2 came out. I feel like it was 96, 97, right?
Yes. I think 90s. Yeah, I think 97. Because I think the first one was 94.
Oh, it was 94?
I think so.
Okay, there you go. I knew it was somewhere around there. So they shifted this to be Die Hard 64 and it was going to borrow elements of GoldenEye. And it was still unfinished by 2000. And by then, they basically just canceled it because there's the impending release of next-gen consoles. Like, there's the PS2 coming out in 2000. And then the GameCube was coming out a year later. So they just decided to kill the 64 version and release this on the GameCube. And a prototype was released of Die Hard 64 in 2017. And Vito, I know you have this on your EverDrive, and you play this a little bit, so you can share some experiences on that before we get to Vendetta.
I mean, it's clearly unfinished. Like, a lot of times you can't get through levels without it crashing. But the levels are. I know when we were playing Vendetta, the second level was a street on the LA streets.
Hollywood Boulevard.
That is clearly in the Die Hard 64 dump that I have on my EverDrive. It's a first person game. You know, you could use your fish, you can pick up weapons. It has like some audio bits in there, like, you know, McClane will go yippee-ki-yay, you know, that sort of stuff. But it's not great, and it turned into a not great GameCube game.
You're putting it lightly is what you're doing.
Yeah, but like I was telling Don, I was like, you know what, if they actually came out with Die Hard 64, I probably would have bought it because I'm such a fan of the movie.
Yeah, I would. Well, I would be more forgiving if it was an N64 game, frankly. Yeah.
I mean, it's worth try it. If you could play it on an EverDrive or emulate, just give it like 5 or 10 minutes and try it and see what you think. But,
I mean, that's really, we can, jump into it because it was released by a former developer, and it, like you said, it's unfinished. Like, the AI isn't really there, right? Like, the enemies can't really shoot you.
They won't shoot you on the street level. They won't shoot you. They'll just like walk past you. If you do the Nakatomi Plaza levels, they will fire back, but they're very stupid, and you could just really easily dispatch them.
Yeah.
There's no like mission objectives or anything, as far as I remember. It's just you're just going around and
it makes sense because it's probably just in such an early state. I'm sure you can go on YouTube and find videos on it, but ultimately they decided to shelve that and release the GameCube game. So I'll get to reviews first before we get to our impressions, because this is, I mean, this is how we're going to end the show, essentially. So reviews, GamePro issue 1. So I just want to be clear. GamePro is usually fairly forgiving on most games, I would say. Like, to hate a game, they really don't like it. So GamePro issue 172, January 2003, graphics 1.5, sound 2.5, control 2, fun factor 2. They said the game stuck close to the source material, including excessive profanity and endless supply of terrorist dispatch, but it has bargain basement visuals, vapid enemy AI, and flaccid controls, which is a fun way to put that.
I've never called controls flaccid.
I never have
before.
either. I've said they're stiff controls, but I didn't mean it in that respect. They said stealth is poor, and there are some annoying jumping puzzles, and the Die Hard license deserved better with something with more flair than what we got here.
Yeah.
EGM issue 161, December 2002. This was only one reviewer because this was an instance where EGM, to pack more reviews in there. Sometimes their normal form was like 3 or 4 reviewers. I think by this one it was like 3. And then for smaller games or, lower end games, they'd have one reviewer. So one reviewer gave it a 4 out of 10. Best feature is Handel's Messiah during hero time, because one of the gimmicks in this game is it ripped off like the Matrix and Max Payne, where you have like a slow-mo mode and then like music plays, which is kind of fun. We didn't get to experience that because we didn't unlock it yet.
Yeah.
But the worst feature is the game is just sloppy all around. The reviewers said that playing Die Hard Vendetta makes you feel like Hans Gruber at the end of the first Die Hard film, falling backwards toward the pavement, flailing and screaming. The controls are bad. They said the auto aim is almost a must. Graphics can be terrible, and the reviewer said he even put bullet holes into the clouds, which we should have tried when we played it out. I did get to play this a little bit, and I had you try it because I was like, Vito, you have to try this before we record, because this game is just a mess. I'm usually forgiving for most bad games. Like sometimes I enjoy them, but this game is just a miserable mess. It feels like an N64 game on the GameCube. It's also one of the ugliest GameCube games I've played. Like by 2003, we had a lot of great games. Like, we had Bond, Nightfire was out, Agent Under Fire. There's a lot of first-person shooters that looked excellent. The GameCube is a really nice-looking system with a lot of showcases. This game looks and feels like an N64 game. McClane looks like an N64 model. Like I was telling you, like when you kill all the enemies in a room, it does like this slow-mo effect where the enemy like his mouth is crudely like agape and like writhing in pain. And they show McClane, he's like bow-legged, like he's about to take a crap in his pants with his guns up. And on top of it, his guns are like shoulder height. He's holding him up like he's shrugging his shoulders. And on top of it, the controls are really terrible. I tried with auto aim and off, and with auto aim off, this game is nearly unplayable. Like it is so overly sensitive. It's impossible to aim. It has a fine-tuned aiming where it's like you zoom in and it's actually even more imprecise and more sensitive. The parallel I said to this was like if you play Perfect Dark GoldenEye and you hold R, where you're free aiming, it's like that, but the entire game is aimed that way. Yeah. It's really, really bad.
That's fair. Yeah.
And then on top of it, this game has the balls to make you do platforming, and and the jumping is just among the worst jumping I've played in any first-person shooting game. So I got through the first level and a half, and I got stuck to a point where you're supposed to interrogate an enemy, and I couldn't figure that out. I was like, what am I doing? Because every time you do something wrong, or if you fail on objectives, that's it. The game's over and you start over from the level. So I had Vito play this. I was like, you have to try this, because if it was just a quarter shooter, I think I'd be more forgiving. And you need auto aim because that does help a lot. Like it just immediately aims at the enemy. There's also an aspect here where you can rescue hostages. So if you're doing free aim mode, you have to very slowly and precisely aim at the terrorist's head because you don't want to shoot the hostage, right? But again, with auto aim, it's a lot more generous. So it actually aims at the terrorist's head right away. So Vito, what did you think of the first 2 levels you played of this game?
Well, I immediately, especially into the second level, I'm like, oh, this is just Die Hard 64. Maybe a little bit touched up, but it still looks pretty much like a 64 game. The platforming is very bad. It took me, a good 5 or so minutes just to do one jump to figure that out.
Well, it's funny because it's funny too, because in the first level, you're like, well, this isn't that bad. It's fine. Like, in the first level, you're like in this art museum, which, again, even more funny when McClane's like in a dirty white beater and pants. Like
he looks like a hobo.
He looks like a homeless guy with a gun who just walked into an art installation or something like that. So you're like, oh, it's not too bad. It's like just wait. Just wait till you get to Hollywood Boulevard, and then you got to see what the game was really about.
Yeah, I was like, oh, this is Die Hard 64, and then the platforming. I got to the same part as you with the taking interrogating.
You have to eavesdrop on their conversation.
Yeah, but does it tell you? Them. I don't think it tells you have to eavesdrop on the conversation.
Well, you have to look at the objectives first, which again, it doesn't really. There's no on-screen prompts. It's something that you have to look at when you start the game, or go into your pause menu and look it up and be like, okay, I remember what I'm supposed to do. But you also don't know when you're supposed to do that, because there's a lot of times where you can hide behind something like, whatever, and you could eavesdrop on terrorists, right? Or in this case, it's gang members in this level.
Yeah.
But it's like, you don't know where you're supposed to do that, right?
Yeah.
So it just tells you, go do this and figure it out. And it's not until you fail, you're like, oh, I guess this is the conversation I'm supposed to be eavesdropping on.
Yeah, because I saw, bad guys with the hostage, and I immediately said, oh, I'm going to kill them. And I shot him, and I got a mission fail. And I was like, okay, I'm done playing.
Yeah.
But hey, you know what? I'm going to give this game a 10 out of 10 because Carl Winslow's in it.
He's in it. He's like the one shining thing out of this whole game. Carl Winslow's the only good thing in this game.
I don't know if I ever told you my headcanon on Carl Winslow is that he's actually Al Powell in Witness Protection.
Well, after this game, you probably should be in Witness Protection. I don't know. I will say one thing that really did make me laugh out loud was in the second level, because we only played like 2 levels of this, and I watched some videos after, and it doesn't get much better. It's just like a mess. Yeah. But the one thing that made me laugh out loud really hard was you go around the corner, and then, because one of the objectives is assist with police calls. Yeah. So I turn the corner, and I see a guy with a gun shooting at somebody. So I blast him, and I get objective fail. I'm like, what? And apparently that the guy I shot was the pizza place owner who was shooting at some guy who robbed it. I'm like, how am I supposed to know that? Like, I see a guy running. I assume that the guy's being shot at he's the victim. And this pizza guy, I think his name was Fat Luigi, Fat Al?
I was gonna say Enzo. I don't know.
Something like that. He had some stereotypical Italian that they had in there. And it turns out I was supposed to help him. I was like, he has a gun. Like, what am I supposed to help him with? So I was laughing for like 5 minutes. I'm like, what? Because the moment you shoot him, it's objective failed and the level's over. I was like, what? Okay, this is how the game's gonna go.
Yeah. It definitely isn't very clear. Like, I think, in any game you see someone shooting, at something, you're gonna assume it's a bad guy. Like, there's no, they could have at least put, when you put your target whatever you call it, reticle. It's another word I have problems with. But if you put that over him, it should have did something like went away,
green or like, should have warned you in some way, or like made you holster your gun or something. I don't know.
Right.
It's just this game, it's a common story where it's like a lot of games or a lot of movies might start off as a different project, different instance, and then you look at it and you're like, okay, well, this clearly was a mess because development was rocky at best. They had to convert this from an N64 game to GameCube. They probably had very limited resources, and it shows. Like, this game is a really bad game. I would still, if I found it for like $10, I'd buy it because it's one of those so bad games that it's not even good. It's just, you kind of have to see it to believe it kind of thing. Yeah. Like, it really is one of the worst games on the GameCube. And again, by 2003, there's no excuse this game should look so ugly. It should not play so ugly. Even strafing can be a challenge in this game sometimes, where I was trying to strafe and like there's like a delay before you do it. And this is a dual stick controlling game. So it's like you shouldn't have that kind of stickiness to it. Yeah. And then jumping's worse because you can't jump, you can't move forward while you're jumping. So you have to like have slight momentum, jump forward, and you might overshoot. Or like what you were doing, where I was doing too, Vito, where like if you move backwards to get off and have some like some headway to jump, you might fall off the platform and like break your legs or something.
Yeah. Well, I made the jump and he made it right at the very edge, and then he just fell backwards. I'm like, oh great, I have to do it all over again. Thanks.
Yeah. Like, this is some of the worst 3D platforming I've played in one of, I don't want to say ever, but it's really bad. This game is just a challenge. And I was actually, when I went into this, because I remember reading this issue of EGM that gave it the poor review, because I remember the cover and I had a subscription then. I remember reading, I was like, okay, well, whatever, it can't be that bad, right? And 4 out of 10 is probably where I'm like, that's probably fair. Like, I don't know what other redeeming qualities this has, but it's a problematic first-person shooter, and with everything else that was on the GameCube at the time, there's no way I can recommend this. I'd say like check it out, but don't expect much from it because it is like a bad N64 game on the GameCube.
Yeah, it almost seems like they brought it over to the GameCube and they just said, we need to put this thing out because we've spent enough money on it. So just kind of quote unquote polish it a little bit and finish it, and just we'll put it out. It's
playable, and that's about the most it is. Right. Like, it's playable, and that's where it begins and that's where it ends. And there is there's a John McClane, or a Bruce Willis ripoff voice actor, and there's a lot of profanity. Like, there's a lot of F-bombs and S's. Like, again, but I think that was the thing of like the early 2000s, where a lot of games were trying to be edgy with the mature rating, and they're just saying those bad words every other sentence. But it's almost like excessive in here because John McClane was not that much of a shit talker back then. Like, he had a lot of one-liners, and this is just trying to do that every single instance it can. Yeah. So it's a rough game. I'll say that it's not something you should seek out necessarily. Play it on an emulator. Maybe get your fix for it. I'd be curious to see what my brother thought, because he loves these shitty games like this, right? But I don't know. I feel like this game is the worst of the crop out of this game. Like I played the Nintendo version first because at least with that, like it's tough, but I know there's some way I can beat it, and it does have a cool concept. This is just a chore to play through.
Yeah, and basically in all the other games, there's like some redeeming qualities to each. This one really doesn't have any.
Yeah, it's just a terrible game. It's the 007 Legends of Die Hard is what I'll put it.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
That's a good way to put it, yeah. And all right, Vito, well, I guess that wraps up our episode. We covered everything Die Hard. We covered a lot of great games and of course, like the fantastic trilogy that we love. Any final thoughts on the Die Hard? I'll call it saga because I like that word, saga. Die Hard Saga or any of the games that we talked about today. I'd say, I already know your favorites, but what would you say your top 2 favorites? Probably mine too.
It would be arcade. I like the PC Engine version, and I like the Nintendo NES version despite its flaws.
Yeah.
And then slightly below, I think I'd rank all those above Trilogy 1 just because I have more, I guess, playtime.
Yeah, more fondness and nostalgia for them, maybe.
But Trilogy 1 is still good and worth a playthrough if you haven't tried it, especially if you're a fan of the movies.
Yeah, I'd put Trilogy at 1 because I do have fondness for that, and that's, I got that. It was probably like 97, 98 or something. But my dad loves the movies, so he actually played that with me, which is great. So I have a lot of memories with him because he loved Lycan shooters. So he played the hell out of Die Hard 2. Yeah. He thought the first game was really fun and also hilarious because of all the explosions, like the dismemberment and everything like that. So I have a lot of fun for that. I'd say that's my number 1 out of the games we covered today, and then the arcade version, and then Nintendo. Yeah. And then, the Die Hard Trilogy 2, I actually like that game to some respect because, like I said, the ambition's there. It's just the execution isn't, but it's a totally average third-person, multi-variety kind of PS1 game. And then Vendetta is just, it's a tragic mess because you should expect more from what's generation that? 6th generation, 5th generation?
I think so.
Something like that. I always get the numbers confused. But again, a PS2 GameCube era first-person shooter should have been a lot better than what Vendetta was. But again, we have to give it some leeway because it wasn't a 64 game. For some reason, they decided to salvage it because, like you said, maybe it was like they have to finish it in some way, but it's just a rough and bad game. It's a pretty terrible game overall.
Yeah. Yep.
And friends out there listening, thank you for listening to us for the last hour and a half talking about Die Hard and gush about it. If you have anything you want to send us as far as feedback, episode ideas, or anything about Die Hard, you can reach us at LegionGamingPod@gmail.com. And we're also on Instagram at Legion Gaming Podcast, where I post my collection videos and all kinds of other fun stuff. Vito, where can they find you on the internets?
On Instagram at 8BitBarrister. Go ahead and give me a follow. Always happy to talk games and movies.
And thank you for coming for this recording, Vito. It's always a fun time when you and I get together and talk about movies or whatever else. So thank you for joining me on this one here. Yeah. Thank you all for listening. Keep your ears out for our next episode, which will be episode 85. We're going to be covering the launch of the NES and everything that kind of led up to it. And then following that, we'll have episode 86 with Duke Nukem 3D. And as John McClane says, yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.